As you are well aware, there are very few environmental regulations for medical cannabis cultivators. An estimated 60 to 70% of all of the marijuana consumed in the United States comes from 3 counties in my assembly district, commonly referred to as the Emerald Triangle. The challenges about conflict with state and federal law have led to a grossly unregulated industry. This has led to serious and somewhat dire environmental damage. The biggest problems we are facing is illegal water diversion, unpermitted ponds, unpermitted roads, the judicious use of pesticides, fertilizers, and rodenticides. This is having devastating effects on our watersheds in the face of an already catastrophic drought. Water consumption estimates for a mature plant vary, and information on this subject is difficult to obtain. But they vary between a gallon to 10 gallons a day. But make no mistake, these are thirsty plants drinking water that in many cases it has been illegally diverted and stored. Last year, Sproul Creek in Humboldt County went dry for the first time in a number of years, which devastated the watershed's ecosystem. Sproul Creek is also home to 5 endangered salmon species, including the coho. State officials believe the stream went dry from illegal water diversions of marijuana cultivators. The situation is worse this year. In an effort to protect the environment, the State Water Resources Control Board and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife requested funding from the governor to create a task force to address the natural resources damages from marijuana cultivation. In 2014, the governor responded, approving a $1.8 million pilot project in Northern California called the Watershed Enforcement Team. This program is again funded in 2015-16. AB 243 would make this program a permanent statewide program. The bill also requires all 9 regional water quality control boards in the state to develop environmental protection guidelines to address wastewater discharges from medical marijuana farms. However, we cannot address the environmental concerns without looking at the source, which is cultivation. AB 243 establishes a regulatory system that's put some basic parameters around the cultivation of medical marijuana. Cultivation oversight is one of the ways to protect our water. The bill requires that a cultivator obtain a permit from a local jurisdiction first and then a state license from the Department of Food and Agriculture before cultivation can begin. AB 243 creates a tag-permitted medical structure for plants. And actually on this particular plant there is a sample of a tag from the Mendocino County Sheriff's Department. This will help state and local officials monitor the number of plants a watershed supports. If a watershed cannot support additional cultivation, no new plant identifiers would be issued. A tag program also improves quality control and enforcement. In Colorado, a similar cannabis identifier program helps law enforcement distinguish permitted plants from illegal ones. Identifiers make it easier to trace contamination and health hazards to their source. The unique identifier or tag program would be run by the Department of Food and Agriculture or a local jurisdiction if they choose to be the responsible entity. Regulations can do only so much with limited resources and funding, and as such, AB 243 provides funding for additional resources by establishing a $50 per medical marijuana plant fee that a licensed cultivator would have to pay to a licensed distributor at the point of sale. This has stirred a lot of discussion. It is patterned after a program that was established in Mendocino County a few years ago. We've been working with the BOE and concluded that at this point, tagging individual plants seems to make the most sense. It's easier to count plants than it is to calculate canopy cover or square footage of cultivation, or some of the other options people are considering. However, I remain open to those ideas. The funds collected would be dispersed by the California Board of Equalization in the following manner: 10% for the administration of the program, 30% to local and state law enforcement, 30% to continuously fund the WET program, and 30% to fund a competitive grant program for environmental cleanup and restoration of public and private lands that have been damaged from illegal trespass marijuana cultivation. My bill addresses critical environmental issues that are having enormous effects on the residents of the district I represent. I also seek to allow for significant local control. Local jurisdictions have a far better knowledge of their individual land use requirements and local ordinances. I believe that the local ordinances should be protected and respected. I know that local jurisdictions are looking for a significant guidance from the state. However, I fear that a one-size-fits-all approach without some local flexibility is doomed to fail. Regardless of whether marijuana for recreational use is legalized in 2016 by a ballot initiative, the reality right now in California is that medical marijuana is legal and has been for nearly 20 years, whether we like it or not. We cannot continue to ignore the problems and hope they go away. That simply hasn't worked. We've kicked the can down the road for far too long, and quite frankly, we're running out of road. I want to thank the chair and the committee staff for their help with this bill, and it has been a big lift, and I really appreciate that. I commit to continue working on with the committee on the following issues: technical suggestions by the BOE to tighten tax collection language, clarify permitting process on the local and state level, and clarify the California Department of Food and Agriculture's authority regarding requirements for issuing a state license to cultivate. Now back to our plant. Obviously, the value is somewhat north of a tomato or corn, and that's the major reason it's here today. And just as a comparison, I looked in the paper today, and you can buy a cantaloupe for $1.19, zucchini 79 cents a pound, carrots 45 cents a pound, blueberries $2.50 for a pound. That's a big one. Information on the value is difficult to establish, but it is significant. This plant is a female clone. It was grown from a cutting. Females produce the buds, and the buds produce the THC that is the desired outcome of the plant. This plant, when it's mature, will produce between 3/4 to 1 1/4 pounds of processed marijuana, according to the Mendocino County Sheriff, who delivered it last night. Talking with people in the law enforcement industry and law enforcement and the industry, the value to the farmer of this particular plant varies from $1,200 to $1,600 a pound for outdoor grown, or $2,400 to $2,600 a pound for indoor grown. The tax rate for the tag would be 2% at the low end and 4% at the high end, assuming that this plant yielded 1 pound of processed marijuana. Bear in mind that plants can produce much more than 1 pound under certain circumstances. I was asked to produce some data, and it's difficult, and as you hear, there are wide variations here. But based on a couple of raids that happened of recent illegal grow sites in the city of Industry, 300 marijuana plants were seized in 2015, valued at $1.2 million. In Solano County, 4,859 plants were seized, valued at $14.5 million. The per plant value based on these stories would be between $2,500 and $4,000 a pound, which may be high, and no pun intended there, but that. The Huffington Post had an article late last year highlighting the findings from ArcView Group. ArcView is a national investor network that provides financing to marijuana-based ventures that said that the legal marijuana industry in California is valued at $1.3 billion with a B, and the national legal cannabis industry valued at $2.7 billion. Industry, the emerald growers in particular, believe that number is very low and believes the market in California is closer to $32 billion. Emerald Growers estimates that there are 55,000 cannabis farms in the state. Bear with me on the math on this a little bit. It's a little bit challenging, but the numbers are pretty big. Estimated revenues realized from an excise tax on marijuana per plant, 55,000 farms times 99 plants times $50 a plant is $272 million in revenue. The industry, Emerald Growers, actually estimates the revenue could be as high as $600 million. We know that not all of these 55,000 farms is cultivating medical cannabis. We know quite a lot of them aren't. But just assuming that 10% are, the revenue from this tagging program could provide between $27 and $60 million for the 3 programs that I'm citing. The Marijuana Policy Project estimates that there are 572,762 medical marijuana patients in California as of October 2014, while CalNormal estimates that number closer to 1.1 million. I'd like to address an issue that was brought up in the analysis under the heading of half-baked issue. Actually, I'll take that as a compliment.
I apologize for that, by the way.
No, you don't need to. I'll take it as a compliment, and I'll tell you why. This is the first time in this legislature that there has been this much engagement by stakeholders, assembly members, senators, the environmental community on this particular issue. We're working on aspects of this issue that is significant to my district. So I'd say that, quite frankly, if you're looking at all the marijuana legislation, it's all half-baked, and some of it's just got the raw ingredients, in my opinion. Each set of amendments on the related marijuana bills are substantive amendments to the bill to refine the intent of the legislation, and mine is no different. I've been working with the authors of the other bills. We have 3 bills that in the Assembly that were collapsed into a single one. My amendments I deliberately held my amendments until I could understand the significance of that joinder of those 3 bills so that I could be in a position to be complementary to those bills. I do not want to be in conflict. I do believe that personally I think that the issues are so significant in my district that I want to keep this as a standalone bill to be able to address those issues. My concern is that while I hear calls for a lot of people to call to bring one bill forward, I fear that the issues that are concerned to my district may get lost in the discussion as the other legislators, quite frankly, represent urban areas. Mine is a much more rural district.